Welcome to Below the Surface, the podcast where we go beyond the small talk and dive deep into the conversations that matter.
From personal growth to the complexities of human behaviour, we explore the stories, ideas and experiences that shape our world without the fluff.
Expect raw, thought-provoking discussions with fascinating guests and plenty of insights to challenge the way that you think.
So if you're ready to look below the surface, you're in the right place.
Let's get into it.
Who is Padraic Rocliffe?
Well, first and foremost, thanks for having me. It's great to be here, and it's great to have two familiar faces sitting in front of me. Padraic Rocliffe, well, I suppose I'll start by saying I'm a very normal person. I come from a family of 7. My mum was from Westport, my dad is from Dublin. I'm also one of 3, so I'm a triplet. 5 boys in the family. Grew up in Dublin, Donecarney, where my dad is from, and to the age of 8. I would say I grew up in a very competitive household, so lots of competition in the back garden and at the dinner table as well. Came back to Westport and grew up in Westport here until about the age of 18. And as I say, I'm a triplet, so my 2 brothers are identical, I'm not. They're very happy to be identical. I'm very happy to be my own person as well. I suppose professionally, I work in the University of Limerick. I work as a lecturer in the Physical Education and Sports Science Department, and also a researcher, all things physical activity. I'm the head coach of the University of Limerick swim team, and the founder of the Prosperity and People Foundation in aid of the homeless. I suppose my friends would probably describe me as someone who likes to step outside their comfort zone, someone who likes to get uncomfortable, someone who relishes, I suppose, these sorts of moments as an opportunity for growth. Someone who's probably had their fair share of ups and downs as well, and I suppose is on a mission to share some of those experiences and help others avoid some of the same pitfalls.
What was it like growing up as a triplet?
It was great. Yeah, I mean, people ask all the time, "Oh, what was it like growing up as a triplet?" But we knew no different. It's all we knew, you know. And so to me, it was just like having, 2 more brothers.
When you were younger, did you wonder why you didn't look like them?
No, I didn't actually. I suppose very early on we were told that Sean and Kieran are identical. So, originally we were twins, non-identical twins. That would have been myself and one of the lads, and their egg split. And that kind of resulted in the triplets. So I always knew from a young age that it was different.
And did you get any special treatment, exposure, not exposure, but were you made a big deal of?
No,
just
not at all. Not that we were aware of. Anyway, there's 3 sets of triplets there in Westport. So
okay, right, yeah.
Which is a lot in a small town, But no, I suppose we were very aware that we were triplets, but at the same time lived a very, very normal life. Very acutely aware that those 2 are very similar. Sean and Kieran are their names.
Yeah.
And, they're a couple of inches smaller than me. I slag them. They've lost their hair earlier than I have, although I'm starting to lose mine as well. But we had a lot of commonality as well. Very big into sport. Sean and Kieran were very into academics, I would say, at a young age. And I probably wouldn't have got through my earlier years in school without them, actually, because they were great at predicting papers and that sort of thing. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
And is there a special bond between the 3 of you? Do you know how people say, that you can really sense if the other one, if there's something wrong, or what's that? Is that true?
I would say it's true for Sean and Kieran.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and they say that themselves. So they have this sort of telepathy, it's called.
Yes, that's the word I couldn't think of there.
So they can sense one another. They say the same thing often at the same time.
Do they? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And they both have very similar interests. They both sport Chelsea. They both play the piano. They ran a piano school together. I do neither.
Did you ever feel left out?
No.
Never felt like left out.
No. Always felt different, but very happy to be my own person. And as I said at the beginning, they were very happy, as far as I'm aware, to be similar and to have similar interests. So I would say growing up, they were very close. I wouldn't say I was quite as close to them as they were with one another. But at the same time, we had that special bond. And I think as we've gotten older, in particular, that bond has certainly grown, yeah.
You mentioned there that your friends would say to you about, or would say that you're someone who likes to put yourself outside of your comfort zone and that you're happy to take on a challenge. So where do you think that came from? Like, was that always in you, or is that something that you've grown into?
I would say that's swimming orientated. So sport has been a huge crutch in my own life, through good times and bad. And I would say, I grew up a swimmer, and swimming was my sport. I played all sports, myself and Quinny here. We used to play, reminiscing on our footballing days back in the day. And
swimming was your thing though, like we always used to like, we were like, geez, he's a serious swimmer, like, you like, that's what we always seen you as this, like that was, like, we thought you were going to go to the top, like, you know?
Yeah. Well, that was always the aim, I suppose. And yeah, through swimming and through any sport, you develop a skill set, and that skill set you can then transfer into your life. And that's what I say to anybody that's listening here today. Yes, it's important to be physically active, but through sport, through being physically active, you're developing a skill set. So a skill set of determination, commitment, work ethic, desire, integrity, honesty, that we can then pull out and transfer into our everyday lives. Now, it took me a while to figure that out. I actually distinctly remember after my third year in school, my mum and dad bringing me down to a boarding school at the time, and me sitting in an interview with the headmaster to get a spot in this boarding school. I think it was Ross Cray. And I didn't get the spot, and I passed all my junior cert exams, but just about, And I remember the headmaster sitting there saying to me, you have a skill set to be a good academic. What's wrong? What's happening? Why are you struggling in school? And I never understood that at the time, because I suppose when I was in school, I always thought of myself as the sporty person, the person who engaged in sport. And even in school back then, 14, 15 years ago, I think the teachers and within the education system, they often looked on you as either the athlete or the academic. And that was certainly how I used to feel about it at that time. And it was only later on in life that I began to realize that actually he was so right, that if you find your calling academically, that you already have that really pertinent skill set. So to answer your question, I would say through sport, and that, I suppose, pain train that is swimming training, because when you're in the water, you're hypoxic, which means that you're holding your breath. So there's very few sports out there whereby you're working out, but you're also holding your breath intermittently between what you're doing. So you're hypoxic, which really adds to the whole pain train side of things. And I think if you can suffer in the water, you can suffer anywhere, really.
So how did you find, we'll say, were you just naturally good at swimming? Or was that just the one that you felt, oh, this lights me up? How did it turn into, why wasn't it football? Why wasn't it hurling? Yeah. Why did it become swimming?
I think I just excelled at swimming. I went to the community games one year, and I wasn't a swimmer. I wasn't swimming with a club at that time, and I did pretty well. And I suppose Castlebar at the time picked me up. I was maybe 10 years of age, joined Castlebar Swimming Club, and the rest is history. I suppose at the time, my mother would probably tell you that I was pretty hyperactive, so it was a great way to get me into a sport whereby I could expend that energy. Mm-hmm. Swimming, you're in the water 6 days a week, so it's a big commitment. You're up at 5, 6 in the morning. You've got your double sessions, and you're doing that from a very young age.
What would you be doing a week now, swimming? Like what, like mileage wise and hours wise, when you were at the height of it? Like
you'd be doing about maybe 10 hours in the water. Mileage wise, you could be doing about maybe 30k a week, something like that, plus your land-based sessions. And that was what we were exposed to from a young age. And I suppose I made my first Irish team when I was 14, and that was obviously a great experience. But a big part of that for me came through spirituality. And I suppose, I never felt like it was just me that was actually pushing me to those heights in the water. If I look back at any of my training diaries over the years, you'll always see references to spirituality, to God, and just that kind of gratitude in that I always felt that there was something else that was giving me those opportunities in the water, that was giving me the opportunities to kind of travel and compete, and often would be very overwhelmed with that sense of gratitude in that, I'd always feel, why me? Why am I getting these fantastic opportunities to do what I love to do? So yeah, that was certainly a big part of that.
Did you ever struggle with swimming? Like, did you always excel? Was there ever a day that you did really fucking shit?
Oh yeah.
How did you deal with that then?
Oh yeah. So when I was 14, I went to Irish Nationals. It was my first time ever going to Irish Nationals. And the swimmers there that had been going to Irish Nationals for many years, but I had a big year. And I arrived and I was second on the start sheet out of all the 14-year-olds in the country, which I couldn't believe at that time, because that was the highest level of swimming. It was Division 1s, it's called. And went in, was very nervous, didn't perform, added 2 seconds onto my time, and I think I came 7th at the time. And
2 seconds.
yes, which is a lot in swimming, believe it or not. But after that, I didn't PB for, I think it was 18 months, maybe 20 months, something like that.
Confidence, you just whacked.
It wasn't a confidence thing. It
No.
wasn't a confidence thing. I think at the time I was growing, you know, and that kind of stunted my, I suppose, opportunities in the water, for want of a better word. So yeah, I went 20 months without doing a PB. That was an awful time. But I will say that throughout that period, one thing has always been constant in my life, and that's consistency. I was always consistent throughout that time, knowing that eventually the opportunity will come. But it, you know, it's difficult. And I remember as a young 14, 15-year-old thinking the more training I do, the quicker I'm going to come out of this. And I was doing double. At the time, I was doing a lot more than my 10 hours a week. I was doing double sessions every day, 2 hours per session. So that's 4 hours a day. And I was cranking it, you know, thinking that the more training I do, the better I'm going to be. You know, I was training with the club plus my own training.
But the fact you having that mindset at 14, like to
Yeah.
to say to like a 14-year-old to say to themselves, right, I'm just gonna buckle down here, be consistent. Like that's fairly incredible. Like at 14 to.
Well, looking back, are you happy that that's what you did?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's how I learned. At the time,
Okay.
I thought it was the right thing to do. I thought more training, the better I'm going to be. And then I burnt out. And
So that's what I mean. Like looking back now, would you say that to somebody else that that's what you need to do?
No, absolutely not. No. So I'm coaching now. I'd never recommend it, but I'm glad it happened. I have no regrets, because that's how I learned that wasn't the right road to take
Yeah.
at that particular time, and that I would end up burning out, which is
And what
exactly
would you have
I
done
did.
differently?
I would have
Like
focused.
there has to be a certain. You have to like put yourself to get to the top. You have to like be close to burnout. You have to like, stare it in the face. Like there's no like if you don't do that, then you're not gonna.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know.
I think something that a word in my vocabulary that hasn't come to the forefront really up until even this year, and even now I struggle with it, is recovery. And you know, I've got a whoop here now, which keeps me in check.
Yeah.
But you know, at the time, I would never recover. You know, I would always crank it, and like I would never coach swimmers the way I coach myself. And part of that really is because it's a mental health buzz. So for me, I like to train at anywhere between 10 to 30 beats below my maximum. That's where I like to be, and that's where I like to train, like, you know. And if I can last for 20, 30 minutes, that's exactly what I'll do. But if someone asks me, why do I train now? You know, my objectives are different. I train for my mental health. You know, I train because I feel good when I train. And for me, that kind of positive chemical reaction in the brain comes when my heart rate is very high.
That's a sweet spot.
Yeah.
You that's where you get hits from different heart rates, but
Yeah.
nothing quite like the hit from that heart rate, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just below where you're kind of comfortably uncomfortable, like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
And do you know what? It's a terrible way to describe it. I'll probably get myself in trouble now for saying it, but it's that place where you're about to shit yourself. Yeah. You know, where you don't know if it's going to happen or not.
Yeah,
Do you know?
yeah,
And
yeah.
you're just, there's a possibility.
Yeah.
I love that space.
Yeah, yeah,
Because that is what, that is where you're developing skills of resilience, determination, commitment, work ethic. That's where you're getting comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And if you can begin to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and you're developing those skills that are easily transferable into all facets of your life, whether it's the days you're feeling anxious, whether it's the days you're feeling depressed. And as I said earlier, for me, it's all about elevating your heart rate, because not only that, actually, if you elevate your heart rate to a high enough level, then you are forced into the present moment. You can't think about how depressed you are,
true.
how anxious
You're
you are.
just trying to breathe.
Yeah, you're forced into that present moment. All you can think about is how damn tough the session is, you know?
Yeah.
And, not only that, I think the term we use in scientific language is exposure. So if you think about symptoms associated with anxiety right now, your elevated heart rate, sweaty palms, sweaty face, all the other symptoms that come with anxiety. But you can emulate those symptoms through physical activity. So all of a sudden, you're beginning to have a much kind of more positive affiliation with symptoms that you would usually deem to be negative. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's the same with cold water therapy. You know, you jump into cold water, you're exposed to the elements, which means you're forced into the present moment because the water is so damn cold. There's the psychologists up and down the country now prescribing cold water therapy to their patients for exactly that reason. I sent you a message recently about this morning. I was monitoring on my Whoop my heart rate moving from a sauna into 8-9 degree water, and it was really interesting because I was overdoing it a little bit in the sauna because I really wanted to spike my heart rate, and my heart rate would spike to about 170 beats per minute, which is only really about 20 beats below my maximum.
In the sauna?
Yeah. Now the sauna is epic. Like, it's down by the River Shannon.
How long were you in there for?
About 20 minutes. Yeah. But it's 100 degree sauna now. Could be even 105.
Right.
Yeah. There's proper heat in it. And what was really interesting was jump straight into the cold water, and within 30 seconds, my heart rate was dropping to resting heart rate.
Yeah, the drop was, there was literally on the graph, there was literally massive peaks, a massive drop.
It's massive, and that is your Valium pill. That is your Xanax right there, but it's in a much more naturalistic manner, you know.
So tell us, you had a very bad accident, and you're lucky to be alive, really.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that.
Yeah, look, I think at the time, it was 2016, and I suppose I got offered a fantastic opportunity to go abroad to represent the University of Limerick on an exchange program through the degree I was doing at the time, which was physical education teaching. I was over in Long Beach, California. Nice. And I think at the time I was having a lot of problems previous to that in my personal life, but I would say very much hidden, around addiction and that sort of thing. And I'm sure we'll touch on all that a little later on. But I went to the States, and I suppose at the time, I wasn't sure if I was going to get out there or not. I was having issues around addiction, and I went sober for 3-4 weeks before I went to the States, because at the time there was talks of me not actually going to be able to go to the States.
Had you got caught? Had you been caught in Westport?
Not in Westport, no.
Or in Ireland?
Yeah.
You'd been arrested for.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
And that was on your record.
Yeah.
Okay, right.
Well, it wasn't even just that. It was more just my family didn't want me to go to the States, or my friends, because I was.
Did they think you'd be worse out there?
It was in the depths of addiction at the time.
Right.
But I remember, 3 years previous to that, I could probably count the amount of times I was sober on two hands, but very much, I would say, a hidden addict,
right.
Whereby during the day, living a very model lifestyle, but by night, living a life supplemented by addiction. And
when you say addiction now, was it drink, drugs, both?
Both.
Okay,
yeah, for sure. Both. Depends on what period you're looking at. But over that 3-year period, drink and drugs. But again, working in UL, head coach of the swim team.
By day?
By day. Very much, I would say.
Double life, really.
Functioning addict, for sure. No doubt about that. But the cracks were beginning to show, and I remember sitting down one particular evening, and I was crying, actually. And I remember, saying to a family member, I just want to live a normal life. I just want to live a life that isn't fueled by addiction, because at that point, it was all I used to think about. It was.
What do you think drove you to lean on drinking drugs, or what were you using it for?
That's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question. I think if I cast our minds back for a second to 19-year-old Pippi or Padraic, the first time I ever had a drink, I remember I was out in Clare Island, and I was out there with the beach lifeguards, and I had planned to have my first drink that evening, and I had a pint of Bulmers about 8 o'clock, and had another pint of Bulmers 9, another pint of Bulmers 10, 11, 12, 1. I ended up on stage that night singing a rendition of Hello Dolly from the musical that I was in that year, And I remember leaving the bar that about 1 o'clock, fell over, and I still have a scar on my arm, from where I fell. I remember sitting out in the bush, drunk, crying on the phone, speaking to someone, just pure emotion, not being able to contain myself at all, and continuing to drink. And I got my hands on, I remember, 10 bottles of Stella Artois. Everyone's in bed at this stage. Pippi's down at the beach, 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We're getting a boat back to the beach.
Oh, Jesus.
I'm working the next day. My boss is with me on the boat, you know, and I'm still drinking. And I remember my boss pulling the bottle off me, like, and throwing it in the sea.
And like, this is your first time drinking. How are you still standing? Like,
But I suppose the point of this particular story is that that's the type of person I was when it came to drink from the offset. You meet people who are well able to have a drink and enjoy a drink. I was never one of those people. I loved the feeling, and I never wanted that feeling to go. And once I felt that feeling go, I would keep drinking, you know? So I would say that's kind of where it all began with that side of things. And to answer your question on why it continued or what led me down that path, I just think some people are made that way and some people aren't, you know? I'm 8 years clean now. You know, I'm 6 years sober.
Good,
and it's the
congrats.
accident that brought all of that about, you know, and ended up in the States and in that car crash, to answer your question from earlier. And I suppose we decided to take a road trip to a place called Lake Tahoe. At that time, it was about an 8-hour drive from where we were staying. And I had been sober for 4 weeks before I went out there, and I'd convinced everybody that I was on the right path. But deep down, I knew as soon as I was going to get to the United States, the first thing I was going to do was go back on the bus. That was my plan. So I convinced everybody that this is what I was going to do. And I landed over there. And if you've any kind of sort of spirituality about you, you know, if you believe in God or whatever that higher power might be for you, I believe that I felt the wrath of God's powers at that time, because I landed over there and God was furious at me because I convinced everybody that I was sober when we both knew that was never going to happen. And I think he put me in that car crash. That's my own personal opinion. I've
like
noticed.
a wake up call.
Yeah, I think at that time it was very clear I was going to end up dead or in jail. And I think I had to be in that car crash to be reborn into a new life. And yeah, but it was mad how it worked out. You know, we were talking about coincidences there earlier on, in that we had a flat tire. And at the time, none of us knew how to change a tire. We were in the middle of Death Valley, of all places. And I remember we had to flag a truck down to help us change the tire. And he changed the tire for us. That was great. I had been sitting in the front of the car. I then moved from the front of the car to the back of the car. So just behind the driver's seat, if that makes sense.
Why did
You're
you
a
move?
tall fella.
We just all decided to move.
Just
Something
Like that.
happened
So
and you
long-
were like, let's change
Yeah,
seats.
long drive. Yeah. And I ended up behind the driver. And it was 5 minutes later, we were involved in a rollover accident in the middle of Death Valley. And, you know, it's true, they say these things, they happen in the blink of an eye. The tire burst, the car dropped, it was a Jeep.
the tire you just changed.
Yeah. The Jeep dropped and it began rolling and landed on its side. And all the windows had smashed. And I remember everybody jumped out the windows, bar myself and the driver, who bore a big chunk of the impact because the tire had burst on the left-hand side of the car. So the car dropped and rolled onto our side, if that makes sense. So
Right.
we took a big chunk of the impact. And I remember, you know, standing out of the car and kind of dangling my hands and arms over the kind of side of the car. And I remember the sun beating down on me. You know, Death Valley is known as one of the hottest places on earth. And I tried to pull myself out of the car. And that was the first time in my life where I couldn't do something that I wanted to do. You know, we said at the beginning, like, I enjoy to get uncomfortable. This is a situation where I couldn't actually do it. You know, I wasn't actually able to get out of the car. And the only way I can describe really what happened next is that God spoke to me. God told me to sit back into the car. Now, bearing in mind, sitting back into this wrecked up car at the time seemed like a crazy idea. He told me to tell my friends to get a pillow from the boot and put it behind my head. And he told me to put my back up against the roof of the car. So if you can imagine, I was in a squat position with my bum a couple of inches off the floor and my spine up against the roof of the car. It turned out to be a perfect makeshift spinal position. And at the time, I had no idea that I had any spinal injuries whatsoever.
So you could hear this voice
Yep.
giving you them distinctive instructions.
But were you hearing a different voice, or was it that the thoughts,
You can ask that question, yeah. You want to ask me, was it my own voice?
was it your own voice you were hearing, or were you hearing a different voice?
It was a different voice.
Okay.
The voice that wasn't my own, but it was very natural. It was something that I didn't even question at that time. Now, what I will say is I've always had a very strong faith and relationship, in my eyes, with God. So it felt very natural at that particular time. But the instructions that were given to me were instructions that I wouldn't do myself. You know, sit back into a car, put my back up
Because it's
against.
not logical.
Yeah. Especially at the time, I wasn't sure if the car was going to blow up. Like,
Yeah.
you know, put my back up against the roof of the car, that sort of thing. And not knowing that I had spinal injuries at that time, you know, and that being in that makeshift spinal position is really what saved my life. And having that said, you know, the adrenaline began to wear off, and
Pain started to kick in.
I had no feeling down my left-hand side at all. I couldn't move my head, so I was just looking up and down and left and right. And I started panicking. I thought I was going to be paralyzed. It was like hitting your funny bone by 100 or 1,000 all over your body. Like, this body was electrocuted, like electrified. Do you know what I mean? And he spoke to me again, and he said, "Have I ever let you down before?" He said, "You're not going to be paralyzed, but you're going to have a severe neck injury." And as soon as he said that to me, an overwhelming sense of calm came over me. I completely trusted and believed in the voice that I heard, and I just knew that I was going to be okay. We were in that car, and I was in that squat position for 2 hours. I must check that. It might be a Guinness Book of Records, man. I should have checked it out. But I was in that squat position for 2 hours. It felt like 15 minutes after that spiritual experience. And the reason we were in there 2 hours was because we had no coverage to ring an ambulance. So we had to wait for someone to find us. They had to drive to the nearest town. They had to ring an ambulance. Ambulance had to come out. The ambulance pulled us out of the car, myself and the driver, and they called in a chopper. Said we're going to need to fly you to the nearest level 1 trauma centre at that time. And the chopper arrived and said, "We can only take one of you because you're both on spinal boards, you know." So they said, "We need to take whoever's worse at this particular time." Excuse me. So they took my bloods, or no, they didn't take my bloods. They took my blood pressure, heart rate, that sort of thing. All was perfect. So they decided to take the driver. Subsequently, the driver was let go that day.
Oh, Jesus.
And I was over in therapy for a year or so, you know, and I remember flying off, and it was like something from a movie, like, you know, you're taking off in this helicopter, and and I remember, like, you know, flying into Vegas, where little did I know I was going to spend the next year in recovery. And I remember, you know, I could see out my peripheral vision, because the door had been open, because there was, what's that word? Not chop, you know, when the helicopter starts shaking, like, you know, so that
Turbulence.
turbulence, apologies. So that to equalize the pressure in the helicopter. And I could see the lights of Las Vegas out of the corner of my eye, and I remember thinking, you know, enjoy this, Pippi, like, because, you know, not many people are going to get to say that they saw Vegas from a chopper, like. And me still thinking I was going to get home that evening, you know. I had no idea that I had didn't feel like a man who'd broken his neck at all. Although I didn't feel great. After that spiritual experience, I thought, oh, I've got whiplash. I'll be home sipping on a beer tonight with the lads, like, do you know. And I got into the hospital in the level 1 trauma centre, and straight away I was put through a CT scanner, full body.
Like a scene from Grey's Anatomy or something.
Yeah, actually, that's funny you say that, Maureen, because I remember the thing that bothered me the most at the time was they were cutting my t-shirt off. So what are you doing? You're cutting my top off. I have to go home later. Like, how am I going to, you know, what am I going to wear? Like, and I remember lying on the bed anyway, and I can move my feet, I can move my hands, and it just really hadn't hit me, like, the severity of the situation. And I remember actually having to pick up my head to see where I was, like, and who was around me, because I couldn't actually lift my head at the time. Like, so I remember, like, putting my hands behind my head and picking it up to see where I was, like, and what was going on, you know. Straight away, Dr. Daniel Lee came over to me, you know, a lifelong friend now, and he told me I'd broken my neck in 3 places, broken my back in 4 places, broken my foot in 2 places, and I started laughing. I was like, "There's no way, like, you know, there's no way." And he told me that that's exactly what had happened, and, you know, in many ways I was buzzing, and the reason I was buzzing, well, was obviously because I had that spiritual experience, but also I wasn't paralyzed. And if I wasn't paralyzed, then all of a sudden the ball was in my court. And if the ball was in my court, I knew I could use the skills that I learned through sport, determination, commitment, work ethic, integrity, honesty, take that straight out of training and throw it straight in to my recovery. And that's exactly what I did. I was in traction for, a long time. I had this kind of turtle shell around my front and back. I had a neck brace up here. I was bedbound for a very long time. And, essentially, if we kind of cast our minds back to the addictive stuff in advance of all this, I needed to be in rehab, to be reborn again into this world. And, I had to learn all the fundamentals all over again, how to get out of bed, how to walk. I was on a Zimmer frame for a long time. I didn't even take my first steps for many, many weeks.
How did you go to the toilet? Sorry, this is, yeah.
Just went in bed. Yeah, went in the bed. So
Yeah.
this is what I'm saying. The nurses over there were amazing at that time. I had to give up every sense of, I suppose, dignity along the way, and that was great. And that's what I needed to kind of, as I say, to be reborn again into this world. And I remember many months later going to the toilet by myself for the first time, taking my first steps, putting on a pair of shoes for the first time, picking up a pen, feeding myself, having a shave, going outside. I remember seeing daylight for the first time in what felt like months, because I was in this hospital bedbound, and
But it's sorry to interrupt there.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like it's amazing to think that you didn't just be like, fuck it, this is it now. That you were actually able to pull all of those skills that you had, like that you had the mindset to be able to take all of that out of your past life and to be able to use them. Whereas a lot of people would be like, they just surrender to this horrendous thing that has just happened.
yeah, I don't know how to say this without sounding like, I don't know what the word is, but I genuinely think it's a Rocliffe gene at the moment. That's what I used to think when I was younger. I think anybody is capable of tapping into that. We all have it in there. It's only when someone puts a gun up to your head that you realize what you're made of. Like, and you're either going to lie down and never walk again, or you're going to grab life by the scruff of the neck and make it yours. So I can tell you that we all have it. You have it, I have it. At the time, I would have said that it was a Rocliffe gene, just simply because, my mother is amazing, like no stone unturned. It's just next level. And I'm very grateful that I feel like we have a lot of those personality traits, myself and the brothers as well. Like, so
It definitely makes a difference. If that's been instilled into you from a young age, then that's what, you don't know any different. But if somebody who, has these real limiting beliefs and thinks that they're not good enough or that they're not capable of doing these things, and then for that to happen, it's for them to understand that you actually are capable. And you know how we were talking about the fire walking that I did the other day? Like,
Yeah.
I was asking, like, what is the purpose of it? And the purpose of it is it's for empowerment, to show you that your mind is telling you that at first, that these hot coals are going to send you on fire. But when you actually tell your mind, well, no, it's not, I'm going to walk over them now. And then you see that you don't light up on fire. It's kind of like, whoa, fuck. Because the heat out of that, like Austin was telling me, but I can't remember now, but it was crazy numbers. But then to think that you're actually able to walk across it without burning.
yeah.
Like it is mad to think that we have all these beliefs and they're the actual thing that's holding you back. But you obviously were brought up in a way that, that sort of, you didn't have those kind of limiting beliefs in that sense. So that's kind of all you knew, which is great to have that.
Yeah, I think, honestly, sport is a very big part of this. I might just read a real quick verse here, if that's okay. It's 2 lines. And
I have a question for you after then as well.
yeah. Essentially, I think this is really pertinent. It's a great couple of lines. It really is. And I think it's important for all facets of life, And it is. It reads, not only that, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. So I suppose the bottom line there for me would be that you try and embrace the uncomfortable, and we can get that through many different facets. And for me, it's through sport. I like to get uncomfortable. I like to suffer through sport, because I know that I'm building a skill set that's going to aid me through other parts of my life. And I think in terms of the recovery, for me, having been a swimmer for so many years and suffered for so long, and I say that in a real positive way, for so many years through sport, that I was able to develop them. But the positive news here, it's never too late, right? Whether you're 15, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, the door is always open to that pain train, you know? And it's never too late to actually develop those skills. And once you tap into that, it's an addictive space because you feel like you can conquer anything, you know?
So you lost a sense of did you lose a sense of your identity there when you had that accident and you're no longer a swimmer?
Well, it's interesting you asked that question. No, not during that period. As I say, a big part of it was spirituality. I was filled with this golden feeling that, and I still am today, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the spirituality side of my life, in that you feel like you can do anything. You know, in my eyes, you need 3 areas in your life to be fruitful, to do well in life. First is your physical well-being. The second is your mental well-being. And the third is your spiritual well-being. Spirituality for me is God, but it doesn't need to be God for everybody. It could be yoga, it could be meditation, it could be Wim Hof, as we were talking about earlier. It doesn't really matter what it is, as long as there's something like a spirit, like that's going to drive you and lift you up and give you a reason to attack each and every day, like, you know. But to answer your question on, I suppose, the identity thing, I actually went to Dublin after I did my leaving cert and went to DIT. And I suppose, you know, people don't really talk about this, but the transition from school to college sometimes can be a difficult one. If you describe me when I was in school, I describe myself as someone who's permanently on cloud 9. Didn't like the education side of things, but had great fun and got on very well with the crew and had a good crack along the way. But I began to suffer around the transition from primary or from secondary into third level. And I suppose for me, where those problems began to lie around were the fact that I took a step back from swimming. You know, a big crutch in my life at that time, and still is today. And I took a step back, and then all of a sudden, I suffered with that sense of identity. Who am I? What am I about? What is my role in life? What is my purpose? Where am I going? What am I doing? And it was like depression sensed that vulnerability. And that's when it tapped into me, you know, and straight away I became depressed. You know, didn't have that sense of that kind of positive release of endorphins in the brain that I was getting, you know, 10, 11, 12 sessions a week. And, you know, depression knows no boundaries, right? It can affect anyone at any time. And those dark hands began to wrap themselves around me quite tightly at that time. And that's really when I began to suffer. And that's where my addictions were born.
And you were saying that you were talking, we'll just go back a little bit. You were talking to a family member and you were saying, I just want to be normal. I want to live a normal life. Yeah. Do you think the scenario that happened in America was God saying to you, right, you can have your normal life, but you need to go through this first?
Yeah.
And then you come out the other side.
100%.
You have your normal life.
No doubt about it. It was the accident was the catalyst.
Yeah.
For that normal life that I was seeking at that time. And for God, in my situation, it was like, well, we're going to have to put him in this accident.
If you want
stop
this
him in
scenario,
his tracks, kind of.
Well, at that time, there's so many stories I could tell
at
you.
least to make you stronger for the life that you want.
Yeah, but this was at the pinnacle of, you know, a lot of things that had gone on the years previous, like all in quiet at that particular time. And this was it, really. It was because at the time, you know, addiction had hijacked my mind completely, and it was the captain of my ship. And at the time, it was all I would think about, you know, and I was getting in trouble. It began to manifest itself in ways that I never kind of foresaw happening. You know, I began shoplifting. I had no money to feed myself. I'd be spending money on drink and drugs. And
were you training? You weren't training during this time, were you?
So this would be, around 2015. So at the time I was training, I was doing a little bit of training, but I'd retired from competitive swimming. Okay. In the pool, that is. So I suppose I'd retired from swimming a proper program, which I'm sure fed into all of this, like, you know, but I think, as I say, addiction had hijacked my mind and it was all I would think about. You'd be shoplifting to feed yourself, spending money on all these other things. And, that story, as I say, stuck out in my mind, whereby it wasn't even fun anymore. At the time, early days, it was fun. You know, you'd enjoy yourself and you're having good fun. At that point, it was such a burden. It's like, you know, it was such a weight on your shoulders whereby it's like, oh, that's all I can think about now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad that that spiritual experience happened and that it gave me a new.
But if you ask for something, you have to expect to earn. Like if you ask for strength, you're going to be put in situations that you're going to have to be strong. Like
100%. Well, look,
you know, it depends on what you ask for. If you ask for something, you have to be ready to and willing to go through what it takes to get it. Like.
100%, and you know all about that.
I know,
I'm sure
yeah.
yourself, Maureen, as well through activity. But people think when I say, oh, you know, I think you should lean into your spiritual side, or actually, I don't even say that. I should correct myself there. I never tell anyone what to do when it comes to spirituality. I just do what I like to do. And if people want to follow, great. And if they don't, that's no problem either.
So can we just for a second, because I know some people won't connect with the term spirituality,
Yeah.
but if we were to think of it as like a broader, like what would be the reasoning or the principle around tapping into that sort of thing, whether you call it the universe, whether it's just about being more present, like what would be the purpose of them tapping into that? Like,
Yeah.
you know.
I can only really relay my experience.
Yes, from your experience, yeah,
So
because we all have our different
Yeah.
reasons for it. But it's like in your
Yes.
experience,
Yeah.
what would you say like would be the purpose for it?
Spirituality for me is important because it gives me direction. I suppose for me, I never feel alone. I always feel like there's something there allowing me to succeed in life. At the same time, I have to say that, you know, people assume that if you've got a bit of spirituality about you, or me, when I believe in God, that life is going to be easy. Life isn't easy at all.
Probably the opposite.
God has made my life very difficult. You know, there's a saying, you know, God leaves his toughest battles for his strongest soldiers. And he has made life extremely tough for me. But I suppose having that faith whereby even in the tough days, you're trying to be grateful, knowing that for whatever reason, he's putting you through those tough times for something else, for a higher purpose, for better times that lay ahead, for 6 years sober, for 8 years clean, for going on and doing a PhD, for now living that life that you've always wanted. And as you say, kind of putting you through a little bit of turmoil to get there. To answer your question a little bit better, Maureen, I would say for me, you know, I never feel alone. And I feel that through that belief, I feel I can do anything. And that gives me great endurance. That gives me great spirit to be able to do what I want to do in life. But it's not that I invest in that relationship because I get. I invest in that relationship because I want to give thanks to something. Because for me, I don't believe that I can achieve what I want to achieve without something else that's allowing me to do that.
Because it's funny because, you know, when we started this conversation, you were saying, you know, that Sean and Kieran were quite academic and you were the athlete. And then in school, like the teacher was saying, like, what's wrong with you sort of thing, that you're not excelling in your academics. But now you have a PhD, like you have a doctorate. You are now lecturing, which is like the complete flip side of like you are up there in the front line of academia. And it's mad to think that you went from being someone who thought that they maybe weren't good in school or didn't have the brains for it to now being someone who's teaching people. Like that's a massive transition. It's great, like.
Yeah, well, I think we're all capable of it. I think, as we said, we were talking earlier, excuse me, you need to find something that you enjoy, don't you? And that really helps that particular scenario. But schools are, you know, I think teachers, and they've been very good to me, don't get me wrong, but we need to be very important in education systems as well, in that Leaving Cert's on right now, right? And it's very much focused on, I'm a teacher, you know, I come from a teaching background, but it is very much focused on a rote learning based style whereby you learn something, you regurgitate it, you put it on the page. So the only way I can compare that to is, you know, I saw a really cool picture recently and it was a picture of 10 different animals. I don't know if you've seen it. And there's a tree behind them. You have fish, a cat, cheetah, dog, elephant, giraffe. And the headmaster says, right, we're going to give you all the same exam, very similar to the Leaving Cert. And that exam is to climb that tree. So the cat has no problem climbing the tree. The cheetah can climb the tree. What's the fish going to do? What's the giraffe going to do? what's the dog going to do? And for me, I was probably one of those in that I realize now I have plenty of intellect about me, but it just didn't fit or conform to what we deem or what people deem as, intelligent, which is school. And
Yeah, I
that
didn't
role-
fit it. I didn't fit the bill either.
Yeah.
Neither did I.
But look at us now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's it, yeah.
And as you say, I went into that course in PE teaching. Those students had 200 more points than me. And I came top of that year, you know. And that had nothing to do with the Leaving Cert, And there's lots of people in similar scenarios. And anyone that's listening, it's important to note that you can achieve anything that you want to. It might take a little bit longer. But if you want to and you're consistent, you'll definitely get where you want to be.
Yeah, it's amazing. You've been on a real journey. It's amazing to see and it's amazing to hear about it. And I know we're only hearing snippets of it, but I imagine there would have been many a road up and down along there. But would you say that having that belief in your spirit or that spirituality, your faith, has been the key thing to helping you come through and trust? I think trusting that everything is going to be okay can be a difficult thing for people. I definitely struggle with that myself. I would find that I'd struggle to trust if you're in a situation where you feel like things are just going upside down.
Yeah.
I find to be able to just let it go and trust that everything will be okay. Personally, I find that difficult.
Yeah.
And it's something I'm working on. But like how in your experience, what would you say to people or to me for someone who's struggles to do that, to trust that everything will be okay?
It's a very tough question to answer. There's no doubt about that. I can only again speak from experience, and I suppose that trust is important. And I believe that my spirituality, which is God, but it could be something else for you, Maureen, it speaks to us every day. That spirituality guides us. Our gut tells us what to do. I don't make any decisions anymore in my own life. I know that sounds almost crazy. The only expectation I have of myself is to work hard, and then I just follow the path that's laid before me. And how do you teach that to somebody? They
have to tap into it
I think
themselves.
I think the important thing there is consistency. You were talking about Wim Hof earlier, Kieran, and you need to be consistent around your intentions with spirituality.
Is that sitting in silence? How are you going to hear the whispers if you're not sitting
attention,
in silence? Do you know?
Yeah, it's sometimes going to be a feeling,
Because you know how you said there you wanted a normal life?
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't consider you a normal person. If we think about, honestly, we were having this conversation before we came on air. It's like of the chaos of normal life, and it's only when you find the silence or the peace and you realize that, oh my God, it can be so much nicer. But a lot of people are living, they're living in their heads. I know we tend to live in our head a lot, but to try and learn to live in your body, I think is where, would you agree, you have to be in order to be able to tap into that higher power? Because if you're living in your head the whole time, you're running and racing around, I have to do this, I have to do that, and oh my God, all this fucking blah, 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 blah. It's just constant noise, and you can't hear anything else.
Well, I think that's trauma that has to be cleared, so like physical activity, obviously super important. We need to be treating and destigmatizing around counsellors, psychologists. I've been seeing counsellors on and off for years, and after the accident saw a psychologist who knows me very well, and we were talking about ADHD earlier, diagnosed me with ADHD, which was massive in my own life to give me answers around some of the decisions I was making. But I think clearing that trauma is important, and I spent many years clearing that trauma and discussing that trauma and understanding myself. Because if you don't understand yourself, then it's very hard to follow the path that's been laid before you, because you don't even know what that path is, or
you don't even know who you are or what you stand for.
Yeah. And that takes time, and that's important. But that can come through meditation, it can come through training, it can come through seeing a psychologist and having discussions around that, which takes a little bit of time as well. But yeah, that's what I'd say. I think it's funny you say that about not living a normal life. I think for me, it's
normal to you, though.
It's normal to you, yes. But if we think about societal norms, you're not a normal person.
100%. But I think for me, I just crave stimulation. I crave it. Like, you know, I would do anything to be stimulated. And if that means like working multiple jobs and, you know, crazy hours, then great. But it's a perspective shift as well, in that all of a sudden you have this car crash. You know, I couldn't read. I couldn't actually, I used to have to wear these glasses with a mirror out here that would allow me to look down. I didn't see my own wiener for a long time, like, you know what I mean? And, you know, it was just, that's a perspective shift. And I suppose anyone that's listening, what I'll say is try. It's difficult. Don't wait for your car crash or your near-death experience to change your life, because I was lucky that I had that experience and that near-death experience that set me on the right path in life. I don't know what I would have done without it. Like, addiction is very hard to overcome. It's really difficult, because at the end of the day, it's so much easier to have that drink or pop that pill. It's so much easier to do that. I mentioned earlier, you know, I'm clean 8 years, I'm sober 6. That's billions upon billions of seconds that I've won that battle against addiction. I only need to lose that battle once, 1 second, and I'm kind of back to that life.
That's fucked
You know,
too, isn't it? Like,
So you need to, and that's very difficult, right? So trying to kind of come out the other side of that is important. But what I'll say to anyone that's listening in that regard is, you have to want it. You know, if you're an addict, and I've worked with many now, and they want it, they want to get better, then that's all you need to work with. But if you don't want it, it's very difficult to come out the other side, and you need to kind of make that choice, don't you, and have that discussion with yourself, you know. So
Yeah. So talk to us about, then you have like the PIP Foundation, and you do help people with their mental health, and I'm probably not even saying the half of what you do, but
okay.
Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So the PIP Foundation, Prosperity in People, or formerly Shine a Light, we work with the homeless. And I suppose when I was over in the United States, I was privy to a dire homeless situation. You know, streets, towns littered with homeless people. We think we have a bad homeless problem here, which we do. You know, it's a lot worse over in the United States. And it was Christmas over there, and I remember at the time, there was no family or friends with me. Having that said, they were absolutely incredible throughout that period. And it was Christmas Day. I met 2 homeless people outside of a diner, and they were asking me for money. And I said, look, I won't give you money, but if you want to come inside, you know, I'll buy you a meal. I was happy to have a conversation with anyone at that time. And it was a mother and her son. They'd fallen victim of society, and were living down in the sewers in Las Vegas. And that was the catalyst, I would say, for the Prosperity in People Foundation and the foundation of that. I came home, we set it up, and initially it was just an idea. This is just an idea to help those in need. And from there, I suppose on the back of the story, it kind of grew and grew. And what I'll say is that we're dedicated to the distribution of essential goods to homeless hands: clothing, non-perishable food items, hygiene products, liquids. Out of the donations that we get, we make PIP packs. In each PIP pack, we've got a hat, a scarf, a jacket, a jumper, gloves, socks, a t-shirt, a pair of pants if we have them. We've got numerous campaigns nationwide where we distribute the goods to homeless hands. And what I'll say is we're unique in many ways in that we offer volunteers opportunities to come to our campaigns and distribute these PIP packs directly to homeless hands. And, you know, what they'll find is that there's a big range of homelessness on the streets, and then it can affect anyone at any time. You know, that's someone's mother, sister, brother, son, daughter, uncle, auntie, granny, granddad. That somewhere along the line, they didn't have that social support that we're lucky to have every single day, supporting us and ensuring that we don't end up on the streets if we have a mental health issue or a financial issue or something like that. And I mean, we've got what's called pip squeaks. So these are like peer supports. So these are people that have gone through some sort of trauma, like myself, or you know, whether it's mental health orientated, whether it's addiction orientated, because we know that homelessness is connected to numerous mental health issues. And then a key component there is education. So we work in schools, clubs, societies. We give talks on overcoming adversity and giving back to those who need it most. And really, the schools, the club societies are the most integral cog in the wheel of prosperity in people, in that within those schools, club societies, they now gather the gear, they now develop the packs. which has been fantastic. So it means all of a sudden, rather than in the early days, we would make the packs ourselves at home in our shed, that we've got, schools all over Ireland now making packs. So it means that we can have a much bigger impact on a broader level.
Wow, like that's
Brilliant.
incredible.
Brilliant.
Yeah, no, it's great. Well, look, what I'll say to you is it's not going to solve homelessness, What it will do is, I suppose, aid others who need it, but also teach an important lesson to anyone that's listening, or you guys, that we all have clothes in our wardrobe right now that we can give out to someone who needs it. Food, hygiene, liquids. We all have these things sitting in our wardrobes today and in our presses that we can use to, I suppose, reach out that hand of hope.
You used to go around giving out haircuts too, didn't you? Go around doing the haircuts.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah, we still do haircuts actually.
Yeah.
Thanks for reminding me, Kieran. But again, sometimes we're the middleman in certain scenarios. Whereby a barber wants to cut hair of those who are maybe homeless, and we make those connections between the shelters, etc., etc. Is it going to end homelessness? No. I suppose without opening up a massive can of worms, getting into the charity sector, my intention was to end homelessness. If there was no such thing as the Prosperity and People Foundation tomorrow, I'd be very, very happy man, because it would mean that there is no homeless problems. I suppose the deeper I've gone into the charity sector and the more I've wanted to connect with other larger corporation charities to end homelessness, because it's absolutely doable.
What would it take, do you reckon? Like,
social housing is very important. Employability is very important. Skill development is very important. Education, but we're doing everything but that. And I suppose, again, without opening up a can of worms, the last thing some of these big charities want to do is end homelessness, because there's a lot of people making money out of homelessness.
That's what I was just about to say. A lot of these charities is it just a farce? Like, is it just a money racket where the people that you think you're donating to aren't actually benefiting from it?
I'm not going to sit here and say it's farce, but what I will say is that
there's a threshold to it, though, isn't it? It goes so far and then it won't go any
look,
further.
if homelessness ended tomorrow, there'd be a lot of people out of work, a lot of people that would be able to pay their bills, and I'm not talking about anything to do with Prosperity and People Foundation here, because we're 100% voluntary.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the big corporation charities, and I've sat down with the CEO of a big corporation charity, and they looked at us as a threat. That's all they cared about. That
Scary too,
we were potentially coming in to a market that potentially might take some profitability from them, which isn't never going to be the case, because we generally don't really deal with money. Essentially, like we want to teach a lesson around giving back to those who need it most through what we have. However, because of that, we will not end homelessness, because we don't have these sorts of grants and large income coming in, etc. So it's a really dark area. Someone asked me recently, if I want to donate, where do I donate? Who's the best person to donate to? And I'd say donate to a small charity where you know that the overheads are very limited and the money is going directly to who it should go to, or to a GoFundMe page. Because you know that money, again, they're going to take it. Of course, GoFundMe are going to take a proportion out of that, but generally speaking, that a good chunk of that's going to go to the person that it should go to. Yeah. Which is sad, isn't it?
It is sad, yeah.
So if somebody wanted to donate goods to the PIP Foundation, how do they go about that?
I'd say the first thing to do is get in touch. Yeah, because we've got numerous donation points across the country, but they're not always operational, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So some are operational, some aren't. Some are operational at different times of the year. So it really depends on where you are. But 9 times out of 10, we'll get our hands on it.
And where's the best place? Like, will they find you on Instagram? Do you have a website?
Yeah, so Instagram.
Yeah.
Instagram's best.
Okay, so we can put your Instagram into the show notes, and that's the best place to
Yeah,
to get in
and
touch.
do absolutely reach out. It'd be great to, there's always people reaching out who want to give back and also have ideas. And the haircuts came from a volunteer, and that was someone who wanted to engage from a different angle. So we're very open to how and when and where we can aid those that need it most, as long as we're doing exactly that. Yeah.
Brilliant. Before we finish up, a crucial question now. I want you to really think about this
Yes,
one.
go for it.
Where did Pippi come from?
It's funny because a lot of people down in Limerick don't even know my name is Padraic. Like, they'll be like, it's Padraic, But Pippi. Well, I'll tell you a story. I suppose when I first started swimming, I used to watch a lot of Pippi Longstocking.
Oh yeah, I used to love that.
Yeah. And I remember going swimming training, and word got out. You might remember, I went through a few nicknames. I used to be called Banana Boots before that. Do you remember that?
No.
I used to, yeah.
Banana boots.
Yeah, because I used to wear these. This is back in the day when people used to wear black boots only, and I showed up to training in these yellow boots, like thinking I was the bees and E's. Walked out of training with a new nickname, Banana Boots, you know. And so I showed up to training anyway, and Barry Robinson, you won't mind me mentioning his name, dear friend, coach, and he heard that I used to watch Pippi Longstock, and so he used to call me Pippi. And I was 12 years of age. I showed up to one of my first ever swimming competitions, and my name wasn't on the start sheet. I was like, Baz, you know, we could call him Baz as a nickname. What's the story? Like, you know, you enter me in the swim race, what's going on here? And we went through the list, and it turned out, naturally enough, they thought I was a girl. So my name was at the top of the girls list. And that's where Pippi was born, and has stuck ever since.
Was not expecting that at all.
Yeah. So of course the swimmers thought this was hilarious, and it's been my name ever since. Now I have to say I introduce myself as Pippi now, Pippi or
Do
Pip.
you?
Yeah. So
That's gas.
there you go.
Well, Pippi, thank you so much for being here today
No problem.
and sharing your story. And I'm sure our listeners will take a lot from that. And I know I certainly have. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, buddy. Really enjoyed it.
No problem. Thanks for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
If you enjoyed this episode, please let us know in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, share it to everyone, and we'll catch you in the next one.
Catch you in the next one.